What's up guys, it's Rusty with Tattlogic, and today we're going to talk about glowing. Specifically, how glowing works and how we achieve a glow-like effect in our tattoos. I'm going to give you guys some examples to go off of, I'll do a quick demo, and then we'll finish it up with a time lapse of me doing a digital design where I use some of the principles that we talked about. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, so we're in Photoshop right now, and I have a few examples to talk about here. So it's really important to study from reference when you are making art, because reference will provide all of the information so that you can better execute whatever your vision is. So if you want to make things that are glowing, well, pull up some images of how things actually glow so that you can understand it a little bit better. If you do this enough times, the more that you do it, the easier it will be to make it just out of your mind. So the first thing I want to talk about is neon signs, or things that are neon. Lasers kind of follow the same set as well. You can see like the lightsaber is kind of like similar in the effect. And let's kind of break down what is happening. So in neon signs, the light follows some sort of line and some sort of writing. Where it's lightest, it's nearly white. It's almost, in most cases when we're drawing it, when we're making it, it's going to be white. It's just an easy way to remember it. So white is like where this light is in this case. And as it transitions away from the light, it starts going up in saturation. And right along the edge, where the line is essentially delineated, the saturation is almost 100%. It goes way up, and that tells us kind of what color the glowing object actually is. So again, if you look up in this corner over here, I have my hue, saturation, and brightness sliders. The hue is the top one, that's what color it is. The saturation is how close to gray or how close to fully vibrant it is. And then the B is for brightness, which is how bright it is. So watching this thing in the top right, you'll see that in the middle, we are completely bright. It's 100%. It's white. It's completely light. And as we transition away, it's going up in saturation. The brightness, incidentally, goes down. It's still very bright, but nothing is quite as bright as white. So just remember that kind of rule set when you're doing anything neon. The way you would tattoo this is you might come in and do the really like hot pink, super saturated color, and then you transition to like a light pink, and then boom, like white, like right in the middle. And if we look at the lightsaber, it's the same kind of thing. In the middle, it's white, and right as we get to the edge, there's like a little bit of pink, and then boom, it's like fully saturated red. And then it fades off into the environment. Now, there's one thing I want you to notice about all of these that's really important, and that is the fact that they're all situated on a dark background. So if you really want to sell something being light or something glowing, it needs to contrast against its environment. If you've ever had a campfire during the day or something when it's light out, you can't see the fire as well. Look at the candle I have here, right? Watch what happens when I turn the background to white. So immediately we're like losing the flame. If you were to tattoo this, you'd barely be able to see the edge of this flame. So anytime you're going to be doing something glowing, you need to consider what's around it and try your best to have a dark background, because that's going to really pop it off the skin if you're tattooing. If you're painting, same thing. The rules are always the same. So you'll notice if you look up anything glowing, it's almost always going to have a dark background. And that's why, because we want to actually see what's happening. So when it comes to flames, you're typically going to go with something more like this first one here, where it's like oranges and yellows and blues and that sort of thing. And they kind of follow the same rules as metal. So when you heat up metal or like rocks or like most solid objects, when you heat them up, they kind of follow this rule here. They glow like red, and then the red transitions to like an orangey yellow, and then it's a bright yellow, and then it's almost white. And most things in science, it's known as the black body principle. Most things, when you heat them up this way, they will kind of follow this arc. And flames, for us as artists, we're not like, we're not like trying to scientifically break this down, but for us as artists, you can kind of think of them as the same way. So if you're thinking, where is the hottest part of the flame? Okay, well, it's probably in the middle, right? Okay, the middle's gonna be white or like a really bright yellow. And then as it transitions away, similar to the neon, it's going to saturate. But in a flame's case, like I said, most of the time we're doing this first one, it's gonna be like this orangey red kind of glowing color versus something like neon, it can be any color. Now, obviously, flames can come in different shapes and sizes and colors, so you'll need to study it. But generally, when there's like a building on fire, or you're doing like a campfire or a candle, they're all kind of following the rules of this first one here. So just keep that in mind when you're designing fire. Now, what do we do with all of this information? We kind of understand how it works. We know the neon, we know how metal heats up. Flames, we've kind of broke that down a bit. Let's go into an actual demo of how we might create something like this. All right, so I have a lightsaber here with a sphere next to it to kind of show how the light source is working. And let me break down how I made this, because it's really, really easy. But before I do, real quick, you can see white in the middle, and then it saturates to this blue, and then it fades off into the environment. That's the only rules I'm following to make this. I'm keeping it simple. There's nothing, I don't have to change a bunch of stuff. You can get really crazy with it, but this basic principle, just study the reference and then apply it into the work. So let's make the lightsaber, right? So what do we know? The light source is gonna be really bright. We'll just do white. So I just have white here, and so I just have white here, and I'll just do a straight line. There we go. Now it's gonna glow, let's say red. So we'll bump the saturation all the way up. Come down here, and I'm just gonna draw right behind it, and bam. All I did was put red right around the white line that we just drew. And if you've ever used like a glowing brush or whatever in Procreate, I guess Photoshop has them too, this is basically all that's happening. It's making an empty line in the middle or a white line, and then it's putting this glowing effect around it. And that's basically what I did to make the lightsaber. Now, in order to really sell something that's glowing, I mentioned it being on a background that's darker, but you also need to consider what's in the environment. So when there's something that's lit up, it's going to light the things around it. So in the case of this lightsaber here, let me see. Okay, yeah, in case of the lightsaber here, it's off, now it's on, and you can see it lighting the ball. All I did was put some blue and white on the ball, but it sells the fact that this is actually glowing more. So when you're designing stuff, you need to consider what's around the object and how is it going to react when it's lit up. So let's look at some examples of how artists have incorporated this into their work. So I tried to include a bunch of different styles here because it's not all realism that we do. So you can see in the first example from Chris Vergoni, things look kind of like neon and fun, but I want to draw your attention to the middle where the character is. So it's really light in here. Get green or something. It's really light in the middle, and then there's definitely an increase in saturation here where he turns to this pink color. He's following the glowing that we just talked about. It's the same thing. And let's go over to Dimitri and see what he's doing. So this is more realistic, obviously, and it looks like a light bulb. And this is more akin to the heating up that we spoke about earlier. So think of like fire and metal and that sort of thing. You'll see this like yellow transition to orange. And he also has it on a dark background. So you can see that this is much more, the effect of it glowing or being bright is sold much better when it's on a dark background. Same thing with Chris. You can see it's against the dark purple of the sky that we see this like glowing effect from the middle. So moving down here, I included some more stylized work because we're not quite getting like super realistic glowing, but they're still applying some of the rules that we talked about. So look at Juan's work here, and you can see he's got these kind of like flame elements coming out of the eye here. But again, the yellow transitions to the red in this case. And the whole tattoo just kind of has this warm, kind of heating up feeling to it. And he's just getting that because he understands some of the principles that we spoke about. And the last one I'll talk about is Ure Perez. He's got a Dragon Ball here, but I wanted you to pay attention to the fact that he's lighting up the face of Gollum here. So he's saying like, not only is the ball glowing, it's emitting some sort of light, but the surfaces around it are reacting to that light, which further sells the fact that this is glowing. All right, so I think that just about covers it. If you are looking to incorporate these kinds of things into your work, I highly recommend studying how other artists have done it. I recommend pulling up reference, drawing from the real world, light a candle in your house and try and paint it. Like, really study these things and break them down. That's the best way you're going to understand it. I did some Flash recently where I kind of incorporated this glowing effect, so I'm gonna let a time lapse play for the rest of the video. It's a couple minutes. Enjoy it. If you guys have any more questions or anything, please leave it in the comments below. And thank you for watching. Bye.
up, I'm